going on? Justin Fuller, ex-Honda salesman, tech lover, today your host. And today we're reviewing the 2025 Honda Pilot Sport. So if you're wondering, how is this different from a 2024 and how does it stack up against some competition, we're gonna go over all that and more. So let's go. Guys, so let's talk about what's underneath the hood of the 2025 Honda Pilot Sport. So this has got a 3.5 liter V6 engine putting out 285 horsepower. That is then running through a 10-speed transmission and out to two-wheel or all-wheel drive, depending on what you choose. Now, the cool thing about this is it doesn't matter if you pick the Sport model, which is now the entry-level model, no longer an LX, which you would have found in a 2024, or you go all the way up to that Black Edition, which is the new top end of this, right? You're going to get that same engine and transmission regardless of what you pick trim level-wise. So I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does the horsepower in this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2024, it is the exact same engine and transmission setup, so you'd be safe to shop there if you want. All right, guys, so while I'm at the front of the car, of course, I'm going to give you a chance to look at the grille, the front fascia, get an idea for what it looks like, but I want to talk about 0 to 60 times. So, all trims, with the exception of one, have a 0 to 60 time of 6.9 seconds. So for the sake of this vehicle and how heavy it is, not too bad, but you may be asking yourself, what's that other trim level? If you are looking at the Trail Sport trim level, a little bit heavier, a little bit beefier, you've probably seen the advertisements where it's very off-roadish, right? That's who they're advertising to. That one is going to be at 7.8 seconds as far as 0 to 60 times. So I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how does this vehicle stack up against other makes and models that are out there in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at your 2024 models, there may be some differences, but if there are, I'll throw them up on the screen so you can really understand. But based off of same engine, same transmission, I wouldn't expect too much out of that. All right, guys, so I want to talk to you about MPGs, but while I'm doing that, I wanted to give you an opportunity to look at the Sport's 20-inch grayed-out alloy rim. I like it. It's actually pretty nice. Usually when you get down to base models, right, which is what this is now, they tend to be fugly, to put it nice, right? So take a glance and look at that. But let's talk about MPGs. So this car in the two-wheel drive model gets 19 in the city and 27 on the highway. Now, if you were to jump to that all-wheel drive model, you still keep the 19 in the city, but you'd be looking at 25 on the highway, so you're losing a couple miles per gallon. Once again, that Trail Sport, though, is going to be the anomaly, right? If you're looking at the Trail Sport model, you're looking at 18 in the city and 23 on the highway. So just something to keep in mind, depending on what you're looking at trim level-wise or two-wheel all-wheel drive, it will affect your gas mileage. But while we're talking about gas mileage, I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this car stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, hey, if you're looking at a 2024, gas mileage is going to be the exact same. You're safe to shop there. All right, guys, so before we really dive deep into this review, there's just a couple basics that I want you to understand related to the Honda Pilot. So, Honda Pilot, 2025, 2024. The 2024 had an LX. That was your base model. That no longer exists. So in the world of trims, this is now the new entry level, the Sport trim. Now, above the Sport trim, you're going to have an EXL. And then above your EXL is going to be your Trail Sport. And then above your Trail Sport, you're going to have your Touring. Above your Touring, there's an Elite. And then now, new in 25, there is a Black Edition, which lives at the very top of this model. So what's important to know about this is that, you know, when you were looking at 2024s, the starting price was a little bit lower. It was roughly, what is this, $38,485, whereas now it's going to be starting at $41,295. Now, both of these are going to run up to roughly the 50s, right? So 53 and some change was in the 2024, and now up to 55 and some change in the 2025. So their takeaway from this is to understand that, one, the trim levels have changed, right? An LX no longer exists, and they've added something onto the other end, which really means they've just shifted the price points up to where now it starts at a higher price and ends at a higher price. So just want to make sure you understand that when you're looking at a 25, if you're considering a 24. All right, guys, so if you're shopping Honda Pilots, chances are cargo space are going to be very important to you. So there's two things that I want to talk to you about. The first is going to be your tailgate. On the back of this vehicle, your tailgate, plus check out the back end, your tailgate is not powered. So when you come up here, you are going to have to manually open this. So be aware, depending on the trim, it is going to affect that. Secondarily, let's talk about the cargo space back here. So what am I looking at here? I'm looking at 18.6 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this vehicle. Now, they've done some kind of cool things here that I really do like. In the back, I, of course, have additional hidden storage, so always nice to have just in case you're worried about theft. But then additionally, I can drop this piece down in, right? So if I want to drop this down and create a little bit of a lip and be able to have a deeper storage, well, I have that. And then additionally, what they've done, which is where it gets really cool, is if you flip this upside down, you now have a plastic piece that you can either slide up, right, if you want, or you can drop this down as well. So if you had like a cooler or something that was wet, maybe swimsuits, whatever, if you're out at the beach or something, you can store them in here and not get the carpet wet. So super cool that they've done that as well. Now, while you're back here, you can see, depending on the trim level, you may get that power outlet back here. And then you do have a speaker back here. And then down here, you're going to notice that I have this little guy right here. So if I flip these tabs, this is where you're going to find your jack and your accessories and a little funnel right here, which I want to explain. Have you ever run out of gas? I have. It happens to everyone at least once in life, and it's pretty embarrassing. But how does that relate to this funnel? One, it's not a Shewee, and no, it's not a kazoo, and there's a lot of other things we could probably make up. I want to explain what this is, though. If I come over to my gas cap, first off, I want to point out this is connected to your door locks, right? So kind of cool. If your doors are locked, this will be locked. If it's unlocked, this will pop open. So no longer is there a trigger up front. You'll notice that this is capless now. There's a valve on that. If I was to run out of gas, I may need a way to be able to hold this open and pour gas into it, because chances are I probably don't have a gas can in the back of my car. That is the function of this little guy right here. All right, guys, so while we're back here, I mentioned that there's 18.6 cubic feet of cargo space behind the third row of this vehicle. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does that 18.6 cubic feet stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2024, it's not going to make a difference. Those dimensions are the exact same. All right, guys, so let's talk about a secondary setup as far as cargo space goes. You have 48.5 cubic feet of cargo space behind the second row all the way back. So it is a good usable amount of space, but while we're back here, there's two things I want to talk about. First, while you're here, you can see that you do have cup holders on both sides, and you do have air vents back here for your third row passengers. So just while it's visible, I want to point that out. And then secondarily, you do have tethers and anchors and some tie downs in case you need to tie anything back here. Now, the 48.5, I want to throw something up on the screen so you can understand how does this stack up against other makes and models out in the world. So while that's up on the screen, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2024 model, you're going to see a theme here. It is the exact same dimensions as the 2025. All right, guys, so if I throw down the third row and the second row, I then have 87 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this car. It's a lot, and this is actually fairly flat. I like that. There's a gap right here, but not much else. So if you wanted to like sleep back here, it would be possible to do. This one's sitting up a little bit right now, but that's because I have the floor mats that haven't been installed in the car yet. So it does get very flat in the back of this. So if you were camping or you like to camp in your car, this would be a very easy car to do it. You could either throw some pillows down here just to create and fill the gap, or you could throw down a board and be able to make this a nice flat surface to work with. But while we're here, I want to throw up something on the screen to see how the 87 cubic feet of cargo space stacks up against other makes and models out there in the world. And then of course, if you were shopping at 2024, the exact same dimensions, feel free to save yourself a couple bucks and buy a pre-owned vehicle. All right, guys, so before we go any further, there's something really important I want to go over that I feel like when I sold cars, people really struggled with, and that's understanding the trim levels and what you get. So we're in the sport model, right? This is the base model. Above this is an EXL, and then a Trail Sport, and then a Touring, and then an Elite, and then a Black Edition, which is new for 2025. But I want to talk to you about two different trims. One in the Sport. If I wanted to jump up to the next model, that EXL, one, how much money is it going to cost me? But two, what is that list of items that I'm going to get if I do so? And then I want you to take a look at that. And then the second part to this is, hey, let's say you want to go one step even further. If you wanted to go from the Sport model up to that Trail Sport, right? The little bit more rugged one that you see typically in the commercials. How much money is that going to cost you? But then secondarily, what is all that list of items that you're going to get if you're willing to spend that money? So hopefully this will give you a good idea if you're thinking, hey, I'm looking at the Sport, but maybe I want to jump up one, or maybe I even want to jump up two trim levels. Now you'll get a better understanding of that. All right, guys, so here we are in the third row of this vehicle, which is surprisingly usable. I'm 6 foot 250 pounds, so I'm not the smallest guy. With this seat pushed all the way back, I can still fit in here. I've got about an inch of space. And that's with it all the way back. If my passenger was to slide it up a little bit, I've got even more space. So I want to do two things. I want to, of course, throw a comparison up on the screen so you can understand how does the 32.5 cubic feet stack up against other makes and models out in the world. And then secondarily, just remind you that if you're in a 2024, these dimensions are going to be the same. Now, while that's up on the screen, I'll just remind you once again, you do have cup holders back here. I do have air vents. So I live in Texas. It's incredibly humid today. I can turn on the air vents for my second row passengers and be able to cool them off. And then additionally, I do have a flip down right here for the second row, which I'll show you. Kind of creates some openness, right? So if we don't need that for the second row passengers, it makes me feel much less trapped in that third row, which is very nice, right? It gives a little bit more open feel. Now, as far as getting in and out of this third row, pretty easy. I've got a button right here. I can flip, it'll automatically open this for me, and then I can climb in or out. Now, I will say if you're an older person climbing in and out of this third row, Probably not ideal. Second row would make more sense, but it is doable for an adult. Now, turning around and looking out the back window of this car, that can sometimes be very important for people for understanding how easy it is to see through the back of the vehicle. There's something cool that Honda does. They allow these to be able to fold down while the seats are up. So if you wanted to leave these down and be able to drive, it gives you more visibility versus if you're over at this side, it kind of affects things, right? And then you have port windows. So if I'm looking back and trying to see out, you can see where I can create or remove visibility in the back of the car. All right, guys, so let's talk about the second row of this vehicle. So in the second row, you've got 40.8 inches of leg space. So I'll give you kind of an idea. I'm gonna throw my seat all the way back so that you can see what this looks like. If I'm back here, I've actually got quite a bit of leg room. Now, if I pushed it all the way up, not so much, but you saw me in the third row sitting behind it pushed all the way back. So 40.8 inches of legroom in the second row. So I'm going to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does that stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While that's up, I'll just remind you 2024 the exact same. While we're looking at that, I want to talk to you a couple things about the back interior. So the first off is going to be what you're seeing. You've got a gray interior with orange stitching here. It is a sport model. That's what you're going to see across all the trims, whether it's, you know, an Accord, a Civic, you know, a CRV. All the sports kind of have this, I guess we'll call it a sport feel themed, right? But texture-wise, I'm going to flip you around to the seats. When you're looking at the seats, you'll notice I've got a couple different textures and somewhat of a racing stripe going on here. It's actually nice looking, and the material's nice and sturdy. Like if I spill something on this, chances are it's not going to show, and that is something that chances are if you're looking at 3 rows, you probably got kiddos, you are going to spill things back here. So it is a nice looking interior for being a cloth interior. Now, if you're looking for an interior that is not cloth, you're going to want to climb up to that EXL and above trim levels, which would be the model above this. So I just want you to understand cloth in this. And then if you're looking for leather, you're going to want to be above this, or you'd want to be adding leather from a third-party vendor to this. Always an option to consider as well. Now, the only other thing I'll point out in the second row is that, of course, you've got your armrests that are going to match. You've got the gloss finish here. You do have additional cup holders and speakers down below. And then when I come across, I do have air vents and 2 USB-Cs to charge down here. All right, guys. So in the front row of this vehicle, you've got 41 inches of leg space in this car. It's decent, guys. Let me show you. If I hop in here and I've got this all the way back, I'm 6 foot. I have got so much room back here as far as the space. I mean, that's considerable, right? And then if I want to slide my seat up, what is an electric seat? Just a heads up on that. Even in your base model, you got an electric seat on this side and that side. I can still give my passengers in the back space, right, as well. Now, while we're up here, it's kind of nice to know that you have electric seats, because in some of the models, you'll find that your base models, which is what this is now, don't always come with electric seats on both sides. So understand that if you're in this vehicle, you will get that. While we're in the front row though, I do want to throw up a comparison so you can understand how does the 41 inches of leg space in this car stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While it's up, once again, I'll just remind you, if you're in a 2024, you could shop for a pre-owned model, right? It doesn't matter, 24 or 25, the exact same dimensions in the vehicle. All right, guys, so I want to talk to you about touchscreens and audio systems. So in this specific vehicle, you have got a 7-inch touchscreen. Now, above that, you will find 9-inch touchscreens across the board, so just something to be aware of. But I want to talk to you about the audio systems and correlate, because there are some differences there. So in the Sport model, you've got a 7-inch touchscreen running a 7-speaker system with 240 watts. Now, if you jump up to the XL, you're then in a 9-inch touchscreen with a system that's running 245 watts to 9 speakers. Now, also, that Trail Sport, the exact same 9-inch touchscreen, 240 watts out of 9 speakers. Now, when you get up to the Touring model and above, you're then looking at a 9-inch touchscreen along with a 12-speaker system produced by Bose. So understand the Touring, the Elite, and the Black Edition all offer the 9-inch touchscreen with a Bose 12-speaker system. Now, you may be saying, well, what's the wattage on this Bose speaker system, Justin? It's a mystery. Bose and Honda apparently don't want to share that. Not really sure why. I've heard it's roughly around 320 watts, but don't know if 100% sure if that's correct. Now, I quickly want to walk you through the touchscreen just so you can understand kind of what this looks like. I will tell you, if you're not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which this does offer in a wired connection, I'll throw something up on the screen so you can understand which models offer wired versus wireless, just so you can be aware of that. But if you're not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, they have this set up to be pretty generic, right? So when I'm looking at the phone, it's kind of a gradient, very simple setup. If I jump over to the radio, same thing, not a whole lot to look at. If I jump into media, maybe I'm listening via, I'm using Android Auto connected up right now, but if you're using your Bluetooth, it's very generic with no imagery. So you can really grasp that they're not really doing much outside of hoping that you're going to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Now, as I come across Connect here, that'll jump into Android Auto, which I already have set up, but I want to jump into the menu. This is where we're going to access things like sound settings. This would be like, equalizers affecting the bass, treble, those things. Bluetooth settings, you know, if I wanted to jump in that, this is a touchscreen, be aware of that. Connecting new devices, changing priority, disconnecting all devices or deleting devices, right? Easy enough to understand there. And then, you know, clock settings, smartphone settings, if you're connecting with your phone, they kind of give you two places to do it. It's kind of odd. Your RDS settings and then just display adjustments. So this is like the basic stuff that you see when you look in settings of a touchscreen of a car, right? Nothing wild or out of the ordinary here. Now, when I jump over here, this is going to allow me to then jump into Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I use a Pixel 7a, so you're going to be seeing Android Auto, but if you're an Apple user, no big deal, man. It's going to look almost the exact same. So right now you can see that I've got my audio running over here on the left side, and then I've got my maps pulled up on the right side. You can always change that. Be aware of that. If I come in here, I can actually scroll down here to the settings. And then from the settings, I want to see you can scroll down here and you can go to change layout, which is right here. If I select that, I can move the navigation over. And now when I jump back, my navigation is on this side and my audio is on that side. So just be aware of that, right? Now you'll see it in here. I've got a background right now. You can see my dog Hera living back there. It will pull from your phone. You can change that if you don't want it to do that. But just understand, they do a little bit of customization to make it feel a little bit like yours. Now, while we're in here, there's two things that I want to point out. One, you can, of course, change the order of all these apps that you're seeing. And then two, you can add in different things, right? The first is if I want to add in some shortcuts to direct me to places. I've set up some examples here. So if I was just looking for the nearest gas station, I can press this shortcut. It'll automatically fill in the prompt for me and then direct me to the nearest gas station. Super cool if you travel a lot and you just need to be able to find something, or if you're looking for the nearest Starbucks or whatever applies to your lifestyle, right? But it's very helpful to have that preloaded for you. The second part to that is you can set up people. So if I wanted to be able to call myself here for the example, I could tap this button, it'll automatically call me, right? Versus having to go or ask the voice command to do it or so forth and so on. So understand you can set up those shortcuts. All right, guys, so if you want to set up those custom actions, you're going to come down to the bottom of the screen down here and you're going to select customize. When you do that, your customized launcher is going to pop up. Now from here, if you just want to rearrange stuff, you would grab your items and move them around, right? And then you're going to unplug and replug, right? Or turn the car off and turn it back on to rearrange that. But I want to show you a couple things, sir. If you want to add a shortcut to the launcher, right? If it's calling a contact, you're just going to do that, right? You're going to select it and then go find the person you want and go ahead and add them in. Now, if it's the secondary part to this of adding an assistant action, this is where we're going to choose this. Now, from here, you want to type in the command, or I'm going to use voice command. So directions to nearest library, right? After that, you're going to name your command. So you may just name it library. Now, once you've done that, you can either test your command or just create the shortcut. So I'm going to go ahead and create it. I'm pretty confident in the idea there. Now, it's going to place it down here at the very bottom. So at that point, you're then probably going to want to grab that and drag that item to wherever you want. So I'm going to grab this and pull it all the way up here if I can, right? All right, so once I get my item moved to the top of my list, so now you can see that I have library, Starbucks, maps, and Spotify. So at that point, if I want to go ahead and turn the car off, and then what I'll do is I'll restart the car. When I restart the car, it'll then load up my Android Auto settings again. And then when it does, we should see my new order of library, Starbucks, maps, and Spotify. So now if I jump back into Android Auto, you'll notice library, Starbucks, maps, and Spotify. I've rearranged the order and added that library as a custom action. Now, having access to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is exceptionally helpful, right? Being able to use those apps to be able to pull things in, to be able to take advantage of things like GPS or your audio, and some of those basic apps. But if you're saying to yourself, man, I really wish that there are additional apps I could use it. So when I say streaming services, I may be talking about things like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, or Kodi, or you name the app that you want to use. Or maybe you just want to download an app that's not compatible, right, with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto currently. Well, I've got a way that you can take advantage of that. How cool would it be if you could actually pull up your streaming services, much like YouTube TV right now, and be able to enjoy it on your touchscreen? Right? Maybe I'm taking a long trip and I want to give myself the ability to be able to allow my kids to watch something on Disney Plus, right? Or just maybe pull up something and listen to it as I drive down the road. Or maybe there's a game on that I can't get on the radio, but I would like to be able to listen to it. Well, this is what I'm doing in here. So you may notice that this looks somewhat similar to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but a little bit different. So how I'm doing this, I am using a CarLink kit box. So this is the CPC 200 T-Box. It's not provided by Honda, it's through a third-party company, but what it allows you to do is essentially turn your head unit into a tablet. Now, to do that, of course, I'd have to provide a tablet, or my head unit in this case, access to data, right? So what I've done here is I've come into the settings, and then I go to Wi-Fi, and I connect up my phone as a hotspot. So you can see my phone is connected up. Once I've done that, it then allows me to come in here, and I can use any of these apps, or I can go to the Play Store and download apps. So if there's an app you want, anything you want, you can go download it. The other part that's really cool to this, outside of being able to use streaming services, right? So a big one for a lot of people is like, hey man, if I was taking a long road trip, how cool would it be that I could pull up Netflix, allow my kids to watch it, right? I could maybe listen and we could be able to take off down the road and just kill time, right? Because taking a long road trip, sometimes it can be monotonous. So you can see that I have the ability to come in here, jump in, and be able to watch things as I go. Now, that is super cool in itself. Just that, right? Being able to watch some shows on here. But the second part to this that I want to show you is the apps that you do have that may be available to you, right? Like Spotify when you're using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But when you're using those, it affects things, right? Things like you got to use the voice command search while you're driving. Or, you know, you can get into certain things, but you can't view an entire person's profile. Or maybe you can get, you know, you can't necessarily get into your library, or you can get in here, but you can't click into it and then view every song in a list, right? You can just kind of hit play and go through them. So what's cool about this is, one, running searches, I don't have to count on voice command. We've all done it where you've tried to type in a name or say a name on the voice command and it just won't pick it up. Right here, I can type it in and pull up that artist and then jump into the artist. Now, once I'm in there, it gives you the full version of the app, right? So I can come down here, see any songs I like. I can see popular songs. I can see artist picks. I can see their discography, right? Everything. So what's cool about that is it unlocks the full versions of apps that you may already like, but understand that in Apple CarPlay and Android, they're kind of limited. And then secondarily, it gives you the ability to go download any app you want. Things like your streaming services, right? All those different things. And then to take it a step even further, it does give you the ability to do things like split screens, right? So if I wanted to split the screen between two apps, I could. I will tell you on this version, this box, it won't allow you to do it with Netflix, but you can do it with other ones. So a super cool way to take advantage of. If it's something you're interested in, the box is $155. Now, I happen to be an affiliate because I review so many things they asked me to review it a while back. If you use my coupon code, which is my name, it'll get you down to $127.10. To me, that's 100% worth it, but you can decide one way or the other. I just want to present you with the idea that there are cool tools out there that you can take advantage of. All right, guys, so we made it through the entire car, and now I want to go back and revisit all those different comparisons that we went over. So if you're scrubbing through, you got up to get some food, you forgot, you fed your cat, whatever the case may be, you can now get all of the comparisons that we went over. So let's go. All right, so in the 2025 Honda Pilot, you've got a 3.5-liter V6 engine putting out 285 horsepower. That's then running to a 10-speed transmission and out to either two-wheel or all-wheel drive. So I want to throw a comparison up so you can understand how does the 285 horsepower stack up to other makes and models out there in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2024, it's not going to make a difference. Same engine, same transmission. Now, next I want to talk to you about 0 to 60 times. This vehicle goes 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. That is blazingly pretty good. I'm not mad at that. Now, if you're in the Trail Sport model, I'll remind you that that's actually 7.8 seconds. So a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. It's set up to be a little bit more rugged. I have a feeling that has to do with it. Suspension probably weighs more. But I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how the 0 to 60 time stacks up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, 2024, going to be almost identical. So you're good to go there. Now, let's talk about MPGs. This car gets 19 in the city and 27 on the highway in the two-wheel drive model. If you go to that all-wheel drive model, then you're looking at 25 on the highway. So you're going to lose out on some miles per gallon there. And then once again, the Trail Sport is pulling up the rear end at 18 in the city and 23 on the highway. So understand, depending on trim and two-wheel and all-wheel drive, that is going to affect things. But I want to throw some up so you can see how does the MPGs in this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out in the world. Once again, I'll just remind you while that's up that if you're looking at a 2024, you're safe, exact same, no big difference there. Now, when you get into the front row of this vehicle, you've got 41 inches of leg space. It's a good amount. It's actually a really good amount. So I'm going to throw that up so you can see how it stacks up against other makes and models out in the world. And a reminder, if you go to that 2024, you see the theme, it is the exact same, not going to matter. Now, when you jump into the second row of this vehicle, you have got 40.8 inches, so just a little bit less, quite usable. I had the seats pushed all the way up, and that way I'm sitting with my legs up in my knees, but if I push them back, I've got plenty of space. But I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does the 40.8 inches of leg space in the back of this, or excuse me, in the second row of this vehicle stack up against other makes and models out there. Now, when you jump into the third row, surprisingly usable. Usually you get into the third row and it's like either a child can sit there or an adult has to sit diagonal. Not the case. 32.5 inches of leg space in the third row of this vehicle. I could sit back there, I could pull the seat all the way back, and I still had about an inch of space to work with. it's actually usable. It's always surprising to be able to say that. Now, after we talked about leg space, let's talk about cargo space. So at the very back end of the car, with all the seats folded up, you've got 18.6 cubic feet of cargo space. So I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does that stack up against other makes and models out in the world. While it's up, I'll just remind you, if you're looking at a 2024, it doesn't matter. It's the exact same dimensions. It's going to be the same for all of these dimensions. Now, if you fold the third row down, from the second row back, you've got 48.5 cubic feet of cargo space in the vehicle. So I want to throw that comparison up on the screen so you can understand how is this vehicle stacking up. Once again, 24, the exact same. Now, if you fold the third row and the second row down, so going from the front row all the way to the very back, you've got 87 cubic feet of cargo space in this vehicle. It's a lot. You could throw some bikes back there. You could throw a bunch of camping gear. It's flat enough that you could actually sleep in your car. If you're one of those people who like to camp in your car, you could take advantage of that. But I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this car stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. Just a reminder about a couple things in this car: touchscreens, 7-inch screen in the base model. All the rest have that 9-inch screen. And then depending on the trim level, it is going to affect whether you have, 6 speakers, 8 speakers, 9 speakers, a 12-speaker Bose system. So be aware, trim level does affect some of those things. Now, trim levels, let's talk about that. This is a sport model. If you're thinking I might want the EXL model, what is it going to cost me? And two, what is the list of items if I spend that money? I want to throw that up on the screen. So going from your Sport to your EXL, this is kind of what you're looking at. Now, I want to take that one step further. If you're in the Sport thinking, I want to skip over the EXL and then go to that Trail Sport Edition, how much extra money is that going to cost me, and what is that list of items that I'm going to get? So I want to throw that up on the screen as well, so you can understand, depending on the trim, you may want to jump. What are you going to get, and how much is it going to cost you? So I want to ask you for a couple favors. The first is I hope you'll press like on this to let people know, hey man, it's a good video. It always pushes it up the search, and you'll get a lot of content like this, and I appreciate you doing it. Secondary, I hope you leave a comment. If there's something you wish I would include, or something you wish I would remove, or you just have a question or comment, I hope that you leave a comment so that I can answer it, or somebody else might see it and be able to help you out too. Third, I hope you subscribe to the channel so when I produce content like this, you will get it. And then fourth, share the video, man. If you got some friends that are looking or some friends that are shopping, hopefully you can take this video, shoot over to them, and be like, hey man, he explains it really good. He does it pretty quick, and it's good content. I hope that you'll share the video. So like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Later, guys.